Hello, everyone. We are Pitt2 representing the University of Pittsburgh in the CQA Investment Challenge. On the next slide, what our team is going to tell you is, first of all, who we are, what our investment philosophy and process consisted of, as well as our portfolio construction, rebalancing frequency, the risk and returns of our portfolio, and to close off our portfolio performance as well as our attribution. And on the next slide, this is our investment team. It consists of Shivangi, Jody, Nathan, Shreyas, and Chen. And now to Shreyas.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to be walking us through our team's investment philosophy and process, starting off with the market outlook and how we use momentum-based investing for a 6-month time frame, and how that led into us choosing a top-down investing philosophy, as well as a passive investment strategy known as buy and hold, and how this all affected our Sharpe ratio. So going on this competition, looking at the time frame of only 6 months, there was only so much that we could really do in terms of this. So we sat down in the beginning of the competition in November and looked at some of the drivers and headwinds of this economy. We noted that the energy crisis would be very prominent coming into the winter, as higher energy costs and colder winters will be contributing to this. As seen in the graphic in the top right corner, you can see the forecast of the world production and consumption and how it is increasing since 2019. In November, we were sort of going into the stay at home to return to work environment and how this could potentially affect different sectors and therefore our entire portfolio. And a notable event at the end of November was the Omicron variant appearing in the United States and how this would affect some of our initial investment thesis. We then again came around in February and sat down and talked about our outlook for the last part of the competition. We noted that the rate hikes in March, as announced by the Fed, would be prominent to how our portfolio would perform. And an unexpected event was the Russia and Ukraine invasion and how that would affect our portfolio. So as mentioned before, we started on momentum-based investing, as this was only a 6-month time frame that we were working in. We sat down and thought of market drivers and headwinds. And from there, as mentioned, we selected a top-down approach in which we looked at the overall economy and then into each sector / industry, and from there choosing individual companies. We decided to focus a lot on energy, financials, and consumer spending. From there, we did some basic fundamental analysis on some of the stocks that we were going to screen. We looked at some basic indicators such as PE, beta, and EBITDA. And from there, we did a basic technical analysis on some of these stocks, such as looking at their RSI and MACD. As mentioned, we are doing a passive investment style in which we are buying and holding. And because of this, we had one of the least amount of trades done throughout the entire competition. I'm going to be handing it off to Chen to talk about our portfolio construction.
So I'll be going to the execution part of our portfolio. First of all, our team have agreed to set a stop loss of 20% loss. If any of the counter reach 20% or close to 20% of loss, it will be cut immediately. Second, on the entry, we are using the short-term yields on particularly on the 6 months against the 10 years yields to gauge the market appetites. So any of the spreads is inverting, we'll think that it should be a good time to short. So the final one is the moving average. Any of the long-term moving average is topping the short terms of our 50 days moving average. We would think that those counters will be a good time to short as well. The next part will be a sector selection. I will let my colleague Nathan to give you guys a more detailed explanation.
Sure thing. Thanks, Chen. So here we have a quick overview of the risk and return expectations throughout the duration of this competition. On the left are some notable events along with their respective timetables, and on the right we have a general idea of the returns we expected. Going on to the next slide, we have the Omicron variant. So with it appearing in November, we decided to go long on healthcare, but short some of the pandemic stocks as it wasn't as dangerous as previous variants. Receding of COVID and the decrease and ending of stimulus plans led us to believe that these stocks like Peloton, Home Depot, AMC, Disney would all be falling short through the coming months. On the next slide, we have the energy crisis, which Shreyas talked about earlier. With the winter months coming, rising energy prices, we decided to go long on the energy sector. Moving on to the interest rate hikes. These were anticipated to occur in March, so we decided to long the financial sector as they would benefit from higher interest rates, and short the tech sector as they would be hurt by higher interest rates and it would be harder for them to borrow money. And finally, we have the unexpected event of Russia versus Ukraine. So during this time, we just made it into the third round of the competition. So we reconstructed our portfolio to a more stable position, reducing volatility and trying to minimize our risk that we incurred. Now I'll hand it off to Jody to talk about portfolio performance.
Looking at the graph, you can clearly see that our portfolio outperformed the S&P 500 over the course of the competition of 5 months. Our portfolio return as of March 24th is 23.43% compared to only about 0.2% of that of the S&P 500. We have 43 long positions with a value of over $890,000 and 59 short positions with a value of over $950. And our Sharpe ratio is 2.45. Now I'm going to pass it off to Shivanji for portfolio attribution.
Thank you, Jody, for this information. What I'm going to do is expand on the aspects that affected our portfolio performance. First, I'll talk about the graphic on the upper left, which is risk analytics. As you can see, our portfolio risk is nearly half that of the benchmark risk. And with lower volatility in general, we are able to manage our portfolio performance to reduce losses. What you can also see here is that our active management has a much higher volatility, but this is given the fact that our market outlook for a 6-month portfolio consisted of the idea of high risk and high returns. And the last graphic I will talk about here is the sector weights. Here we can see that our heavy weight in the information technology sector was particularly helpful given that the benchmark shows that this was a well-performing sector. And now on the next slide, what I will be doing is taking a closer look at our attribution analysis for the time period of February 15th to the February 28th. Here we can see information technologies held back our portfolio, which makes sense that given that the sector is particularly sensitive to federal rates. On the other hand, consumer discretionary and healthcare did particularly well in this period, which could be easily explained by the effects of COVID on the market. And now finally, in conclusion, we are third in returns, 7th in demerits, 6th in Sharpe ratio, and 7th overall. And I would like to close this presentation by thanking you for your time on the behalf of the University of Pittsburgh. I would also like to thank Axioma for providing the risk reports and the CQA organization for hosting this competition. It has been a wonderful learning experience. Thank you.